Hello, and welcome to the candidate interviews for the 2015 municipal election. This is brought to you by Citizens for Environmental Balance and taped here in Newburyport's community studio, PortMedia, located on Graff Road. Citizens for Environmental Balance, or CEB, is a grassroots volunteer citizens group dedicated to ensuring that the people's voice is heard during public debate regarding the important issues that will have a long-term impact on the quality of our community's environment and our children's future. One of our mission goals is to present factual information so that informed decisions can be made regarding the future of the community. Citizens for Environmental Balance has, for a number of local elections, run candidate interviews. This is a series of one-on-one interviews with candidates for the city council positions. All candidates have been invited to participate to air their stance on issues and to present themselves to us, the citizens of Newburyport. Each candidate has been given a list of questions 48 hours in advance of his or her interviews in order to prepare. Each candidate shall be asked the same questions. Follow-up questions will be asked as needed, and these will vary. I'm Dennis Chambers. I'm a resident of Federal Street and a registered voter here in the city, and I have essentially formulated these 10 questions. Each candidate's interview will air on the local access channels throughout the remainder of the season. In addition, the interviews will be posted on the internet for those without cable. May the voters be informed. Hello, I'm Dennis Chambers. I'm here on behalf of Citizens for Environmental Balance, and we are talking today with Mr. Charlie Tontar, who is running for City Council again from Ward 4. Charlie, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Dennis.
Very glad to have you here.
Thank you, and thank you to the Citizens for Environmental Balance for sponsoring this. It's so difficult for us to find a forum in which we can get our message out to voters, and this opportunity is just fabulous.
Why don't you start at the very top, telling us a little bit about your background and why you're running again for City Council?
Sure. I grew up in Lowell, upriver from Newburyport, and there were a lot of similarities when I was growing up between Lowell and Newburyport. Newburyport, of course, is older. Both were factory towns. Both had reached their peak well at the beginning of the 20th century. When I was in high school and then college, I used to drive all down here to go to Plum Island. And people in Newburyport are always telling me, how horrible Newburyport was back then. And, compared to Lowell, it looked actually pretty good back then. Right? I didn't notice it being bad. It was like home, right? So I've moved downriver. I'm an economist. I have been teaching at Merrimack College for this is my 38th year teaching. I have areas of specialty in urban and regional economics and in environmental economics. And I also have an area of specialty in the history of economic ideas. Decided to run 2 years ago. I've always been, being in urban and regional economics, theoretically, and always looking at abstract problems with the, in the 90s, I got a grant from HUD to work with the city of Lawrence. I did an economic plan for revitalization of the city of Lawrence. I helped to initiate a community development corporation to begin dealing with the housing. I worked very closely with the mayor on that. I got a grant from the EPA, Environmental Justice Grant, working with the city of Lawrence. In that grant, we applied to FEMA. The Spigot River had been flooding extensively. I wrote a grant which for the first time FEMA agreed to use poverty metrics in order to grade the grant, and the city of Lawrence did get that grant. And now along the Spigot River, there is a linear park along the river. The flooding has been mitigated in the city of Lawrence. It took 20 years, all right, for that vision to come true. But so I did have, on one hand, teaching the stuff and looking at the theory, but I did have some relative hands-on experience. Being in Newburyport, 2 years ago, I quite frankly did not like the direction the city was going in there. I thought that a culture of conflict had emerged in the city council, too much conflict within the council, between the council and the mayor. I thought we could do better. And it's actually the historic district issue that really brought that out to me. I was disappointed that the council couldn't reach some sort of a compromise, and that's why I ran. So I ran 2 years ago with that as part of the my mission, right, to get elected, and we did achieve that right away. By a 11-0 vote. It was a compromise. Didn't make everyone perfectly happy, but it was a compromise. I also thought, and a second reason I ran is I thought that the residents of Ward 4, really deserved better representation in City Hall. Someone would get back to them regularly. So one of the things I promised to do, and I have done it, is I may be the only city councilor doing it. It may be an immensely stupid thing to do, but I hold council office hours at the Riverside Cafe in the Toll Building every Saturday morning. I've been doing it at 10. I'm thinking of shifting to 9. And I'm there. I'm available. Anyone can walk in the door, have a cup of coffee with me. People have done it, and discuss any issue that they may have. Finally. Background in economics, I think, gives me a particular angle of vision on the city's issues. And as chair of budget and finance, I've tried to bring that to the council. So.
Let's combine philosophy and practicality in our first discussion issue, and that is New England development.
Right,
Mr. Karp. They are rolling inexorably into town. They're going to have some major impact on the city, I believe. I think a lot of people think so. What is your take on the whole NED issue?
NED is extremely interesting. I mean, as city councilors, we like to think, and as city officials in general, we like to think that we control the destiny of the city. But when you have someone that has over $3 billion in assets, and they own over 50 major properties in downtown, and they are protected by private property in the Constitution, a lot of what happens to the city is going to be determined by what New England Development chooses to do. And that's just a reality. I feel that it's an important role of government, especially local government, to protect what the residents of the city feel is important as much as we can. I think the Waterfront West Overlay District is an effort to do that. I think it has good guidelines. It's hard to do that without a specific project in mind, because it's fairly general. May have to be changed depending upon what NED wants to do, but it provides a degree of protection, and that's essentially what zoning is designed to do. Actually, I don't think NED is inexorably rolling out its plans. As a matter of fact, where are their plans? And one of the
but they are rolling into town.
They've been here. They've been here for some time, and we are playing with them, right? Jockeying on the garage. And I would hope that New England Development would want to have a good relationship with the city. And would view the city as partners, and would understand that we represent what the residents would like to have there. I understand that New England Development will have its own idea as to what they want to do, and they're very accomplished developers, and they bring a lot of firepower with it. The hope is that they do a good job, all right? But the definition of good is, variable.
At least we're looking for them to be self-serving. It's in their best interest to do a good job.
Yeah, I'm sure they're going to try to get the maximum profit margin that they can out of their property here. That's a given, all right? And I think. it is possible in terms of local economic development. I was just talking to the president of the college today, and because the college is located in Andover, North Andover, and it's had some difficulty with Andover. And you know, I was saying there really is extensive community of interest between local businesses and the community. And the trick is to find that common ground, and both sides to compromise and to work together. Newburyport, in particular, I mean, there are lots of benefits to having New England development here. And I mean, in terms of tax revenue, we would benefit from you know, higher assessed value to the property. They have talked in the past about a hotel, you know, again and again and again, and I think this is really true. I've run an economic analysis of our downtown. We need a hotel here. It could be a game changer in terms of creating a stronger demand for downtown businesses, in particular restaurants, drinking establishments. And so we have a community of interest, but you know, it's always dangerous when there's there's an entity that is going to call the shots. One
of those benefits you mentioned might be the garage. Could you expand on your thinking on the garage a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I think if the latest plans that we just got, I mean, that's very much in the design phase, would bring the number of spaces to about 350. I know New England development. Actually, in that overlay district, we strongly urge whoever develops it not to have a large expanse of parking in the area. All right, so it's interesting that, you know, we have a large expanse of parking on the waterfront, but on the west and in the private part, where the overlay district says don't do that, right? And you know, New England Development knows that they need parking spaces for whatever they do, and I think I think we can reach agreement on a price point. How many spaces do they get, given the assessed, not the assessed value, given the market value of the property, and that has to be negotiated.
You see it as basically a good thing?
The parking garage. I do think the parking garage, and it's a good thing because it allows us to take that parking off the waterfront, and I think that's critical. I mean, I articulated this last time, and I think that the whole issue of the central waterfront is a very heated issue. So one has to be very careful what they say, and maybe I'm not careful enough. But that to me, all right, urban renewal was established in the post-World War II era, basically to redesign America for the convenience of the automobile, all right. And so you had a lot of these pre-automobile cities, mostly in the Northeast, a little in the Midwest, who are not designed. They were not built when the automobile was around, and they were very difficult to get around in once you had the automobile. So that's what urban renewal was about. It gave money to communities to tear down their structures that were pre-automobile and redesign it to make it convenient to get around in an automobile. And the waterfront was torn down. Now, I don't think anyone would argue that what was there should have been kept there. I mean, that coal plant, the old warehouses. So it's probably good that we did get money to tear them down. But the citizens of Newburyport at that time and a little later realized that they did not want all these spectacular Federalist buildings torn down. We did not want the city to be restructured to make it convenient for the automobile. We did not want strip malls in what is now State Street. And they were right. And by the way, in the 70s, at the same time that people were fighting to preserve the waterfront and to preserve the downtown, in Lowell, I was part of a group. I just gotten out of college, came back from Georgetown University, and didn't have a job. I graduated in the recession, so I picked up some part-time teaching, jobs. And I became associated with a group that was, at the time, fighting an urban renewal project that would have extended the Lowell connector through one of the neighborhoods of Lowell, the South End, and would have obliterated a lot of the factory buildings, became the base of Lowell's industrial park in the 80s. And we were able to stop that. So I'm very familiar with that.
So there's a correlative with Newburyport in that.
Oh yeah,
in
same time, same struggle. And so you look at that, at parking on the waterfront. To me, it's a vestige of urban renewal. All right, we tore that down, and all we can do with it is put automobiles on it, right? And it's not the highest and best use of it. And it kind of steps on our image, all right, to have automobiles on the waterfront. Right, our image is of we have echoes of our historic past as a maritime city. Clipper ships, the sailing, and we were an important pre-revolutionary and immediately post-revolutionary maritime port, and ports were
maybe one of the most important.
That's right.
I think.
Were the essence of the new country, and that's what Newburyport was, and I think we draw on that. Now, just to go on when I'm lecturing here, my students.
I'll take notes.
Shortly after urban renewal started, not just in Newburyport, but in the urban economic literature, something happened, and we saw it happen. We being economists, when you designed an urban landscape for the convenience of the automobile, you also killed community. Right, think of suburbs. All right, divided with large plots, houses, distant, which is very desirable, and was very desirable in the 50s and 60s and the 70s. All right, to live apart. You get in your car, you never see your neighbors.
See the USA in your Chevrolet.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I was just talking to a colleague of mine who lives in Topsfield, a fine community. He said, but I don't know my neighbors. Right? I get in my car, I go to work, I go to the store, we nod to each other, but there is no community. And when that was realized, the sort of new urban movement, right? Which started pretty early, 70s, 80s, and now the idea is, and it is what is the basis of smart growth. People want what Newburyport has always been. Right, which is denser, people living closer to each other, and mixed use. All right, if you were to go back 200 years in Newburyport's history, what you would have found on the waterfront is this vibrant, dynamic mix of shipping and storage, and people would have lived right on top of the shops. I mean, the waterfronts. During the late 18th, early 19th century, was the very heart of the community. And here, Newburyport split off, all right, from Newbury because there was such a cultural difference between the farmers,
urban and agricultural,
who were in the agricultural community, and this very dynamic, vibrant commercial community. So I think by putting automobiles on there, we are stepping on our heritage. We're stepping on the image that makes Newburyport, quite frankly, special.
Right. So that has to change. Those automobiles.
I think the cars have to come off. Right. Plus, there's an environmental issue. I was, we were talking earlier. The college where I work needs extended, parking, and it's in North Andover. We tried to get a new parking lot, and the town correctly told the college, if you're going to do that, you have to capture all the water runoff and you have to filter it, because we don't want what comes out of those automobiles in our groundwater system. And the EPA doesn't want it either. Yet here we have automobiles on a riverbank where what leaches out of the automobiles, it doesn't matter if you can see it or can't see it, believe me, it's there, and it goes into the river, then into the Great Marsh, which arguably is our greatest environmental asset, a huge environmental asset.
Let's move down to the Newburyport City budget. The council has
Yes.
a limited role in that. The mayor gives
Yes.
you
Yeah.
folks the budget. What you're thinking about the budget going forward the next couple of years?
I am the chair of the Budget and Finance Committee, and so I have spent a lot of time with the budget over the past 2 years. And one of the things that I did when I first when I was thinking of running for office, and I would advise anyone who's thinking of running for city council to do the same, I attended all 15 hours of the budget workshops. So annually, as part of the budget process, when we get the budget from the mayor, what we do is we meet with every department head and we go over every department head's budget line by line, and they cooperate tremendously, and it takes a long time to do it. That experience before I got on the council, introduced me to the department heads. I got to know them a little bit, see how they acted. Plus, I became fairly familiar with the budget and the budget process. And I just, let me just talk about that process a little bit in maybe more detail than people want to know, right? But, we're, about 35 years into Proposition 2.5. All right, Massachusetts was a pioneer, 2.5 in Massachusetts, Proposition 13, in limiting the capacity of local governments to raise property taxes. Right? That by itself, all right, constrains municipalities. All right, the intent of 2.5 was to constrain municipalities, to make them lean. All right, and so we cannot tax more than 2.5% of the city's assessed value, right? You just can't do it. And during the economic downturn, 2008, 2009, we were popping up against that limit because as values go down, you hit that limit. And we cannot increase taxes by more than 2.5% plus new growth, right? Or you have to have an override. And that gives a certain fiscal discipline, all right, to the city and to every municipality. That's the law, and we have to live within that constraint. It is the mayor's job to construct the budget. That's the executive's job. The mayor's doing it right now. Mayor gives directives to the department heads. For the past 2 years, it's basically the directive is, you better rationalize every penny you're asking for, all right?
Or justify anyway.
Or justify it.
Right.
We need to this, and if you look at some of the budget categories, like purchases, go less than 2% increase in a year, 1.8%, less than 1% in buying supplies. It's on the the non-labor part of the budget, and it's not a lot, right? Most of a city's budget is a labor cost. Personnel. Mm-hmm. It's very, very thin, budget. So when you look at that, when we as a council go through what the mayor has presented us, it's a challenge. I mean, and our job is to cut, all right? So we go through that very carefully, and we're looking for things to cut. And when department heads come before us, we ask them to provide a rationalization as to why they need that. I mean, we were under particular pressure this year because to try to cut from what we call the city side of the budget so that we can make more revenue available for the schools. And so we spent a lot of time on it. And we were looking at department purchases of copy paper. We were looking at electrical bills, seeing if there was a way that city buildings could cut their electricity use. We were asking department, are the lights turned off at night? So we got down to the detail. I have a high degree of confidence, and I can say this, that this is, especially on the city side of the budget, a very tight budget. The conundrum that cities find themselves in is that we are labor-intensive entities. Teachers, police, fire, public works, right? We're a service, right? And a lot of the gains in productivity in the United States over the past 30 years have come about because the average worker works with more capital, all right? So the ratio of capital to labor has changed, and that makes each worker more productive, and that lowers costs. Cities don't have that option. I mean, it's hard. It's hard to find a machine, a robot that's going to replace a teacher or a policeman or a firefighter. And so we're stuck in a world with pressure, market pressure for higher wages. And like any other economic entity, we have to go into a market to find laborers, and that's a competitive market. And so there is upward pressure on wages. Although, you know, we signed a couple contracts over the past 2 years. Again, the contracts are negotiated from the mayor's office and from the director of administration and policy and administration. And it's tough. It's tough negotiations. When they come before Budget and Finance, I first ask the union representative, how did this negotiation go? Are you happy with it? And in every case, they say, we're satisfied. We're not happy by any means with everything, but we think it's a fair compromise. And I asked the administrator the same question, and I get the same answer.
It's a good deal when both sides are somewhat satisfied.
Right, somewhat, and somewhat dissatisfied. All right, and that is a negotiated settlement. And so we have some, you keep on having contracts come up. There'll be tough contracts. There'll be tough negotiations. But I think in the end, it's fair. I mean, I don't get this sense that people, especially when people think of politics on the national and maybe even the federal and state levels, that people are not being held to account. And I really have not had that, do not have that sense in the city of Newburyport. I think there's a very strict accounting of every penny of the taxpayer's dollar. It's a tough environment. It's a really tough environment.
Speaking of taxpayer dollars and unpleasant jobs, let's talk about water and sewer in the city.
Yes, water and sewer, which incidentally, of course, is an enterprise fund. And so it is enterprise funds are funds that we are allowed to establish where the taxpayer pays a fee for service. All right, so it's separate from the general fund, where from tax revenue. So as most ratepayers know, you pay for water and sewage, and it's that payment, that of course they're not for profit. The payment is based on the cost of providing the service. And so, there is a water commission, water and sewage commission now. They were merged, that oversees the expenditures, and yeah, rates are going up. Rates have been going up. A lot of the increase is we have a very old water system in Newburyport, right? Those are old pipes because we're an old city. And they spring leaks all the time, right? We understand that, right? And we needed a new water treatment plan, and we needed a new waste treatment plan. That cost a lot of money. We bonded out to do it. In the last council, one of the things that the commissioners said to keep the rates down, they had said that they have some reserves, cash reserves. Because they have been able to keep their costs down, so the ratepayers pay. They have some surplus, and so they wanted to give that back and keep the rates down. The council did not support it. I voted for it. And I think that we're going to reverse ourselves on that.
Is that free cash that you're talking about, or is that something different?
It's not called free cash for the enterprise funds. As a matter of fact, free cash is called free cash because it's not limited to being spent just on one area. That's what's free about it, right? So what they have is it's the same reconciliation process. At the end of the year, we close out the city's books. And the enterprise funds also close out their books, and that goes to the state. And by the way, we also have a separate audit that we do by accountants, right? That do a fiscal audit of all accounts, including water and sewer. I mean, there are a lot of eyes that look at the city budget. The state goes through it, and then the state certifies that, yes, indeed, you did spend a certain amount, you did bring in a certain amount, and the difference for water and sewage is a surplus that can be is available for capital projects. So the councilors who voted not to reduce the rates argued that that money was going to be needed to address the odor at the waste treatment facility, because there is tremendous concern over that, and from what we've seen, that will be addressed. It cost about $3.2 million, but it will be addressed, and I think it needs to be addressed.
Every citizen in town has a vested interest in the education of our children. Can you expand on that a little bit for?
Yeah, I will. First of all, there is an elected body, the school committee, that is the principal elected body to deal with the school department. So I think it's important that people out there know that when we do the budget, we get one line, and that one line is the school budget, and it's a one amount. We can cut that, right? But we have no influence over where the cuts will be. Right, we just, by charter, we just don't have that control. We had a good relationship with the school committee and the school department. There certainly was some tension because the school department put forward an aspirational budget. I think there was some confusion the way it was reported. There was some fear that we were going to have to cut teachers for fiscal reasons. That was not true. We straightened all of that out. We found some money to cut out of the city side of the budget. We worked out an agreement with the mayor because we can cut, but we can't add. And the mayor agreed that if we found money to cut, that she would transfer it to the school budget. And the school committee and the superintendent outline their priority. If you find us money, this is what we'll spend it on. So I thought that was a good process in terms of, remember my theme that I said at the beginning, I was willing to compromise. I didn't want to go to war. It would be easy to have gone to war with the school committee then, but we didn't. And so that's sort of the budget side. I'm an economist. I tend to look at the budget side of things, right? Having said that, I think Newburyport is in a position now where we should have aspirations for our school system, right? We should want it to be one of the best in the states, by whatever measure, MCAS results or. And that's something to aspire to. We do have a constraint on us, and it's a financial constraint. And a lot of that constraint results from the decrease in money that we've received from the state. And I understand the state is strapped for finances. The state. In 99, 2000, passed a incremental decrease in the state income tax that's been rolling out. There's less revenue. There's less revenue to distribute. I know Senator Ives has been working very hard on the part of the general laws of Massachusetts, which is called Chapter 70, that has to do with school financial reform. The point of it was to even out funding in poor districts and wealthier districts. I know that the state, I've been to a number of meetings in which local officials argued that it should be reformulated. I'll be honest with you, I'm not in the mood to take money away from the Lawrences and New Bedfords and Holyoaks and Lowells of the state. And I think there's an acknowledgement of that by the Republican Party. At least I heard that from Senator Hill and at some of the meetings I went to. So there is a desire to address things like special ed, which can really murder you, transportation costs, to see, I mean, in special, and there is a mechanism for the state to aid cities and towns that are burdened by a unexpected and a big special ed expense. I think that it needs, on the state level, they are looking at that and give us a little more relief. So, we face very real financial constraints to get to where we want to get to. And I do very much appreciate the superintendent articulating what those financial needs are to improve our school system. And now, even though I'm an educator, I don't feel that it's my job to get into the details as to how I think the education should be. If I wanted to do that, I'd run for school committee, right? And I mean, I certainly have ideas, but I'm not going to. I think it's the school committee's responsibility to do that. For instance, whether or not language should be taught starting in first grade, which will cut. Whether there should be music. I mean, I think those are policy decisions, and the school committee is the appropriate policy board to do that. I'll have my own opinions. Sure. Of course, I think economics should be taught in kindergarten up. It should be required 2 hours a day, but others might have a different opinion.
I'm with you. I pretty much flunked macroeconomics at Maryland, so I should have taken it earlier.
When were you at Maryland?
A long time ago.
Well, tell me, when were you at Maryland? Because I was at Georgetown 67 to 71.
66, 67.
All right, so we did overlap a little bit, yeah.
Let's wrap up our discussion today, if you will, on an issue that impacts pretty much everybody in town, that is the sidewalks.
Yeah, sidewalks. It does impact everyone in town, and I feel a little guilty here because my side
for being an economist, or?
Yeah, I feel guilty for that. But for Jefferson Street, where I live, was repaved 2 years ago, and we have brand new sidewalks. So this is a hard. So I want to make something.
Coincidence, though. Right?
I want to make something clear about that. It wasn't. So National Grid actually decided that they were going to replace the gas main on Jefferson Street, and that was their decision. And when they do that, they rip up the whole street. They rip up all the sidewalks. The main had, interestingly enough, had never been replaced. So it needed to be replaced, apparently. And when that happens, what the city will do is the city will follow up by repaving the street and doing the sidewalks. So I had nothing to do with it.
No, of course not.
Nothing, right? And I wasn't a city councilor at the time. It's not sidewalks, it's also sidewalks and streets. The mayor asked each council to recommend the streets that they think are the worst streets in your ward. The at-large councilors mentioned them. I lobby with the at-large councilors to get Ward 4 streets on the list. I put in Arlington Street, Columbus, and Plummer on the list because I think they need to be done. When they're done, sidewalks would be done as well. It's extremely expensive. They didn't make the list. that the mayor of the final list as to what was to be done. The mayor shares the list with us, and if you go out and look at the streets that will be paved, you know, I think the conclusion you reach is that there is, you know, they should have been a priority. All right, I can't really argue with it. I'm still going to push for, you know, Arlington and Columbus and Plymouth to be done, but and then things happen in the winter, damage. I had, you know, so I'm happy. As far as sidewalks are concerned, I think I heard an estimate from DPS that to actually redo all the sidewalks would cost $26 million. Right?
For a second there, I thought you said $26 million.
Yeah, $26 million. I did say that, right? I'm not sure that that's accurate, but sidewalks are expensive, have become very expensive. And if you really think about it, the last time that there was a large, significant paving creation of sidewalks was the WPA program in the 30s. All right, that's. I mean, if you still see them. In a lot of communities, they did a darn good job putting down those sidewalks. But, I mean, that's when a lot of sidewalks were done. You know, they probably, in retrospect, there probably should have been a deferred maintenance fund. People a generation ago should have been paying into a fund to replace the worn out, because this is what it is in this city. It's deferred maintenance, capital maintenance that was ignored.
And it's easy to put it off.
You put it off and you put it off, and when you do that, all you're doing is putting an obligation on a future generation, and a lot of that happened in Newburyport. This generation, say for the past 15 years, has been whacked with a lot of deferred maintenance. Yeah. You know, City Hall, police station, library, high school, the middle school, new elementary school, wastewater treatment plant, water treatment plant. I mean, that's a lot of capital investment. So sidewalks are part of that. In recent years, we have, you know, maybe increased, say over the past 6 years or so, 4 or 6 years, the allocation to sidewalks by about 400 or 500%, somewhere in that range. It's not enough. We acknowledge it. You know, interestingly enough, one of the reasons that we had money for sidewalks is we put in a meals tax. And when I was on the council when that was done, and when Ed Cameron suggested that, it was wide. I mean, the rest, you know, the council didn't want to do it. Right? It didn't. It failed. And because there was a lot of opposition, and then the next session went through. And it's been a source. It's been a very, very valuable source of revenue that half of which we can address to sidewalks. Not enough, too little. There is the issue. The council just, you know, got standards that that DPS drew up, that Wayne Amaral drew up, the head of the highway department. I think that is extremely important. Our responsibility is public safety. When you put in a sidewalk, it has to meet certain specifications. We now have those standards for brick and for asphalt and for cement, depending upon the part of the city that it would be in. I support the ordinance that will come before us to have brick sidewalks in the downtown historic area. I think that's a very important draw to Newburyport. We have to keep our downtown looking in a certain way. So I support that. I do not have an easy fix for sidewalks. And quite frankly, I don't think there is an easy fix. We keep on chipping away at it. In my ward, you know, we've just got a request to repave Hale Street and do sidewalks out there. If you look at Merrimack Street through Ward 4, you know, there are places where it's a mess and it's difficult to walk it all the way from the roundabout to downtown. Merrimack Street's in trouble. You know, it's too bad that Obama's stimulus to the economy in 2009 wasn't twice as large, and money could have, filtered down to the cities, but we don't have that anymore. And it's not an expense that, that we can do anything else other than chip away at it, in my opinion.
Shall we wrap it up then?
Yeah, thank you. That went by really quickly.
It did. That did.
Yeah,
Mr. Tontar is running for city council in Ward 4. Thank you very much
thank you,
for your
Dennis.
time.
And I want to thank everyone who took the time to listen to this. I really appreciate it. And I'm going to ask you for your vote on November 3rd.
Thank you.
Just trying to work for you. Thank you.
Thanks.